moving on. The show must go on, and we must talk some darts now. And that's, of course, the World Matchplay, as it finally is here. Going into the 2021 World Matchplay, we discussed how wide open it was. A lot of people are now saying that it's even more wide open this year. Do you agree?
I've seen this said several times over the last few days since the field was confirmed on Monday evening. Then we had the draw as well a few hours later, and we'll come on to talk about the draw in more detail later. But I remember seeing a tweet from Matthew Edgar. He said that this is the most open match play ever. Dan Dawson, when he was conducting the draw with Paul Nicholson, he brought up, is this the most open match play? And it's a tag that you could make an argument for, couldn't you? When you think back to the history of this event, the 32 players in this event all going to be playing for the Phil Taylor Trophy. And Phil Taylor, he practically owned this tournament, 16 titles out of 23 years from the mid-90s to his last year, 2017. That's almost a 70% strike rate in holding the title at the end of the tournament. We did have a few years where we had Rod Harrington go back-to-back, Michael van Gerwen go back-to-back, but that last year that Phil played in it, he did a number on Michael van Gerwen, and I remember that game, such a one-sided game that the crowd were really on Michael's back that night. And the draw that Phil had that week, he was a surprise winner, I guess. I think he was around 25-1 before the tournament because of how tough that draw was. But since Phil has retired, we've had 4 World Match Plays, and we've had 4 different winners and 4 first-time winners as well. Gary Anderson, Rob Cross, Dimitri Vandenberg and Peter Wright. And you look at all the other majors in the PDC, whatever you like to call them, that have been held 4 or 5 times since then. And I can't think of one where we've had that many different winners and that many different first-time winners, and we've not had someone win it twice in that time. So it shows that this is a hard tournament to win. And I think we say it every year that the strength in depth in the PDC, it does seem to get bigger and bigger. And I was looking at the seeds that we've got in this. We've got 12 of them have won a TV event in the PDC. In a senior event, you've got 3 others that have won staged events in the PDC, and the other one, the odd one out, Dirk van Dijvenbode, he's made 2 finals on TV in the last couple of years and one recently as well. So that shows you the quality we've got in the seeds. And even the Pro Tour qualifiers, you've got former major winners in there. You've got someone that's just won the World Cup last month, Damon Heta, players that have made major finals, semi-finals in the past. And I think when you throw in the fact as well that you've got a world number 1, Peter Wright, okay, he shows some good signs of form coming back in Barnsley over the weekend, but he's got 1 ranking title so far this season, and the player just below him in the rankings, Going Price, he's had an up and down year. And even the tournament favourite, since the draw was done, he's gone out to 11-2, I think, with the title sponsors Betfred, and that shows you how tough his draw is. Adrian Lewis in the first round, who's just won a title again, and then Joe Cullen or Damon Heta. So I think it's going to be difficult to try and predict a final and a winner, which we are both going to try and do later. But I think given the field of players that we have got assembled for the Winter Gardens this year, you could quite easily make a case that this is one of the most wide open match plays that we've had.
Yeah, I agree that it's wide open, but I'll touch on something slightly different, and that's the difference between this year and last year. If you go back to last year's show, well, one difference was I was in Mexico, so maybe it really wasn't wide open, because we know every time I go to Mexico, Peter Wright wins a major. So it wasn't really wide open. It was a guarantee last year that Peter Wright would be the World Matchplay champion. But we were thinking it was wide open for a completely different reason than we are this year. Last year, Michael van Gerwen was really struggling, and there was that opening at the top of the game where there was 3, 4, 5, 6 players who were all playing at a similar level near the top. And the quality beyond that was pretty good, but we weren't really thinking that any one of the 32 could go on and win it. We wouldn't have been that surprised. Obviously, on their day, anyone who qualifies is good enough. Or at least last year, anyone other than Glenn Durrant, who still is really struggling right now. Go back 2 years ago, Glenn Durrant certainly was good enough to win it. But the big difference this year is not that there isn't anyone playing at the level that Michael van Gerwen used to, and there still isn't. But that's not why I think it's wide open this year. It's because the number of players who are playing at that top level is not like 6. It's half this field. And those that aren't playing that much further behind. Look at the Pro Tour qualifiers. Who's in bad form right now? Ryan Searle, maybe? He's still pretty darn good and recently won a title with just a blitzkrieg of a day. And he can still do that on any given day. The biggest thing is he's been inconsistent recently. Brendan Dolan's had a really terrible year. And then he went and won a title on yesterday, as of the time of recording, a couple of days ago by the time you're listening. Who else is struggling? Callum Ritz has regressed a little this year, but he's still having flashes that he showed he's the same person. Gabriel Clemens, okay, he's not the player he was a couple years ago, but he's coming back into some form recently. Adrian Lewis just won a title. Martin Lukeman is probably the Pro Tour qualifier who's struggling the most right now, but it wasn't that long ago that he made a Euro Tour final. He's probably the weakest link in here, followed maybe by Mateusz Razma, but Mateusz Razma just made the final session on the Euro Tour. Even the players who are struggling of the Pro Tour qualifiers 2 months ago were playing pretty darn well. We've never seen that before. There's not really a weak link in this field. We will come back to this slightly later because John Thompson has a listener question that touches on that. But that's why I think this is so wide open, because even the Pro Tour players pretty much all are in pretty good form right now. Yes, there's still not someone playing at that Michael Van Goren level, but it's not just the 6 players who there were last year. The top 3 plus maybe Michael Smith, Dimitri Vandenberg, who made the final, and obviously Johnny Clayton, who had a breakthrough year. It's pretty much all the seeded players and a few of the Pro Tour qualifiers as well. Some of the ones I didn't mention. Damon Hedda, who looks every bit a top 16, if not top 10, if not top 5 player recently. So there's so many players who really could win this tournament. That I think it's more wide open, or at least as wide open as last year, for different reasons, but still just as wide open.